Hello, happy Monday. Welcome to our community call. I am especially excited to do this week's call because we are talking about building muscle. And I think I'm going to be posting a lot about just debunking myths with building muscle, giving education on building muscle, and um, just highlighting the benefits of building muscle all this month leading up to the launch of our muscle building cohort that will be launching at the end of this month. It's going to be continuing through the holiday season. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to really take advantage of the holidays. Like naturally, we are around, it's a little easier to eat in a calorie surplus or even at the upper end of maintenance in November and December. And so we really wanted to help you take advantage of that time and prioritize building lean tissue, as it's a little easier to have a higher calorie intake. So we might as well be using that increase in food and like be intentional with it and focus on building muscle. And so we're going to talk about that. We're kicking off kind of the month with talking about building muscle. And I now I want to know, I need to look at my clicks on the Coach's Corner email. I don't know if anyone got it, but the subject was the secret to long, lean muscles. And the secret is there is no such thing as building long, lean muscles. Hopefully, all of you know that already, and that's not a surprise to you. The length of your muscles is going to come down to your individual anatomy. And we're either building muscle or maintaining muscle or losing muscle. And in conjunction with that, if you're building muscle and losing body fat, then you're going to really see visible muscle on your frame. And that's where a lot of clients experience that kind of body transformation, is when they're able to build muscle and lose body fat. That gets that like toned look that a lot of women are asking for and seeking. And so it's not that to not get too much into the nitty gritty, there's not like special kinds of muscle that you would be building in Pilates versus with a barbell. The difference is with resistance training in usually group fitness classes in general, initially you will build muscle. It's going to be enough resistance that you're going to be able to grow lean tissue. And then at some point, the resistance kind of maxes out and you're just going to be maintaining. So the goal for all of us should be to continue to prioritize building lean tissue for the rest of our lives so that we can live long, happy lives and we're able to do everything that life demands of us, from maybe playing with our kids and being able to do whatever they want to do, to bringing in all the groceries in one trip, to putting our luggage into the overhead bins on an airplane, walking down a steep hill, like whatever it is, we need to be able to have enough lean tissue on our frame that we can move and be active in our 60s. So if you're in your 30s and 40s, now is such a good time to really take advantage of hypertrophy, which you'll hear me say often, which is more sciencey sounding name for building muscle, and that's building muscle size. So we want to prioritize hypertrophy, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Let me pull this up. Sorry, 1 second, guys. Okay. I have some homeschoolers asking me questions. All right, sharing my screen. Maybe. Okay. All right. Can everyone see this? Yes. Okay. We're coming down. Oh, and then another thing, same goes for toning exercises. I think a lot of times you'll see misleading marketing online. And this is one of them that I see very often, of like, here's this great toning workout, or here's a really fantastic toning exercise. and we're not toning our muscles. We're building muscle, and then maybe in conjunction with that, we're losing body fat, which can give a toned look. And I know that you might hear me say that and think like, well, what's the difference? But the difference is it's misleading. We want to be building muscle when we're lifting, and that may or may not give you a toned look. That's going to come down to if you have body fat like over that muscle or not. So I just want women to be able to see marketing and be educated enough to know if it's misleading or not, and to know like really what you're getting out of the marketing. So that is one that's really bothersome to me, because there aren't like special, if you're using smaller weights and doing higher reps, that's not going to be different than using heavy weights and doing fewer reps. The goal should be to push yourself, which can be done in 20 reps or it can be done in 8. But if you're pushing to near failure, that's where you build muscle. If you're just like casually lifting a weight, it's not going to do anything to change your body. And I think that's what most women are looking for, is a transformation and a change. So if you want to see that change, we got to be lifting heavy, and we also got to eat to support growth. And so we're anabolic. So why building muscle is crucial for women. These are so important. And I think often we are only interested in the aesthetic. I think as we get older, we start to want more than just the aesthetic, just the look. But I think sometimes that comes too late, right? So I really want to highlight the importance of building lean tissue so that it's not too late to do so. It's never too late, but essentially, I think I heard a metaphor recently, that it's never too late to start, but you are essentially like the gun went off a while ago and you're starting the race behind everyone else. So that's where like building muscle and prioritizing that in our 30s and 40s before we hit menopause is going to be really, really beneficial, because it's going to be more challenging after menopause. So number
Yeah.
one, oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking, you don't want to dig yourself out of a hole, like if you don't
Yeah.
need to. Like, so that's kind of what it's about, like starting from a good baseline instead of needing to work your way up to a baseline, or, a decent baseline, and then move forward from there.
Yes, because um uh I was just going to look up this statistic really quick.
I feel like we're working with
On
a lot.
average, muscle mass declines at about 1 to 2% per year starting in your 40s. And this can speed up post-menopause due to hormonal changes. So without intervention, this loss of muscle, which is called sarcopenia, which you guys have probably heard, can increase the risk of weakness, reduced mobility, and metabolic issues. So we can prevent that, and now is the time. So living longer, muscle does so much more than make you look strong. It acts as a reservoir of amino acids that are essential for immune function, metabolism, and hormone regulation. The more muscle you have, the better your body is at fighting off frailty, keeping you healthy, and even improving the quality of your life as you age. um, Improving your metabolism. Muscle mass helps regulate blood sugar levels by being the biggest site for glucose disposal. So when you build muscle, you're not just getting stronger, you're also preventing conditions like type 2 diabetes, especially important as we age. And I wanted to explain like that a little bit, muscle's role in glucose disposal a little bit more. So muscle acts like a sponge for glucose, sugar in our blood. And after we eat, our body breaks down carbs and into glucose, which are then used for energy. So muscles absorb glucose and either burn it for energy during activity or store it for later use. And the more muscle you have, the more active, and the more active you are, the more glucose your body can handle efficiently. So this helps keep your blood sugar levels steady and reduces the risks of insulin resistance. So we're going to be talking on another subject. We are going to be doing a call on optimizing insulin sensitivity at the end of the month with David Herrera, who is in charge of all of our one-on-one client blood work review at Hungry Fitness. So stay tuned for that call. I'm very excited about it. And I have been wearing a continuous glucose monitor this month. So I'll be talking about kind of findings and what I've learned on that call as well. And then going back, preventing chronic disease. So strong muscles lead to strong bones. Resistance training increases bone density, which is really important, and helps reduce the risk of osteoporosis and fractures. It also helps protect against heart disease and can improve cognitive function. I was going to look this up too. Okay. So, and on that, osteoporosis related fractures, about 50% of women over the age of 50 will experience an osteoporosis related fracture in their lifetime. And the risk of a hip fracture increases significantly with age. Around 300,000 Americans aged 65 and older are hospitalized for hip fractures every year, and women are at a greater risk, with 75% of hip fractures occurring in women. And this is like a really staggering statistic. I personally have family that have been affected by this one. And so I think it's just extra important in my mind. But after suffering a hip fracture, which 75% of hip fractures over 65 are women, um, about 20% of people die within a year due to complications. So I know maybe for some of us, age 65 and older, like feels like a lifetime away, but it's not. And so really, like, prioritizing resistance training is going to help increase your bone density, and it can be done. Like, we have so much time to do that now. So taking advantage of that and regularly implementing resistance training, even once a week, twice a week is fantastic, but starting with once a week. And it doesn't have to be crazy. Like, starting with a small amount of resistance training and building can do wonders. And in fact, if you haven't been resistance training, starting small, even with body weight exercises, will go a long ways. So then last, hormonal balance and mental health. Building muscle regulates key hormones like testosterone and growth hormone, which are especially important as we approach menopause. Feeling more balanced, less stressed, and more energized, you can thank muscle for that too. So how to build muscle? Prioritize protein. Aim for 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight every day to support muscle repair and growth. An easy way to look at that is honestly to just get 0.8 to 1 gram per pound that you weigh. So if you weigh 150 pounds, trying to get somewhere like 135 to 150 grams of protein per day is a great starting point. If you track your food intake and you find you're eating 60 grams of protein a day, then let's try to increase by 15 to 20 grams. Let's start with 80 grams a day. And let's do that for 2 to 3 weeks and get used to what that feels like, what that looks like on your plate. And then let's bump up to 100 grams and just build from there. It doesn't need to happen overnight. Come back to this something over nothing, like small improvements over the course of a year are going to be huge changes. So keep that in mind. I would recommend tracking your protein intake every day and then looking at the total, looking at how much protein you eat in your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then kind of starting to pre-log your days. And that will help you strategize really quickly. Like maybe you're eating 1 egg for breakfast. Well, let's add 2 more and a half cup of egg whites, or let's add another egg and do some chicken on the side or cottage cheese. Just like finding ways to make tweaks that really probably don't take a lot more preparation, but can go a long way in increasing your overall protein intake, which is going to go a long way in transforming your body. Number 2 would be lifting heavy. Challenge yourself with heavier weights. Aim for 6 to 12 reps per exercise to stimulate growth. And I think this is good. I was actually just listening to a podcast with Dr. Israel. I can't think of what his last name is. It was Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. I'm a big fan of hers. If you haven't listened to her podcast or followed her on Instagram, I highly recommend. She's done a lot of research in hypertrophy, building muscle for longevity, but she was interviewing Dr. Israel, and I'm blanking on his last name, but he was talking about rep ranges for beginners. And he said even fewer, 6 to 8 reps for a beginner, because once you go beyond 8, we start to mentally fatigue a little bit and our form will break down. And so think if we're doing 20 or 30 reps, like they're going to get sloppy, especially if we're new to a movement. So sticking in that 6 to 12 rep range helps mentally, that you can stay focused on your form for each rep. because form is very important when it comes to building muscle. Having proper form is going to keep you from getting injured and also allow for you to actually build muscle. If you don't have proper form, then you might not be actually stimulating the muscle that you're trying to stimulate, or you might be kind of outside of that range of motion that's optimal and can cause just more likely to cause injury. So sticking with that 6 to 12 reps, find something that, maybe when you have a few reps left, you're starting to notice that you're slowing down with the movement. And then those last couple of reps are really challenging to do. Would you ladies add anything on that? Eating protein or lifting heavy?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the form always comes first, right? And it's always, I had a client just ask me this, it's always relative in terms of like more weight or more reps. But I like what you said, and I probably could have phrased this better to my client too. It's really more about the intensity, right? And like your perceived intensity that matters. And if you want to build muscle, that's got to be up there. Because if something is just like not that hard, it doesn't matter if you're going to do 20 or 40 reps of it, right? It's not going to stimulate your muscles in order to break down, so then it can really rebuild itself and become stronger through that repair. And that's the intensity is something that like you also learn with experience over time. That's a tough one to start off with as a beginner, but it's definitely like the more experience you get, the more that you do a workout, which is another reason why it's awesome that we repeat workouts. The easier it is to kind of get a handle on what that intensity feels like.
And I think that if you are starting like going outside that comfort zone of lifting more than you think you can, I think like a good start would be to like choose at least one movement in your workout where you're going to push yourself more than what you've done before. And having that be a movement where you feel very confident in your form, that would be a good start as well. Because usually I think you will surprise yourself with what you actually are able to lift if you haven't gone past that or like experienced with that before. So
Yes. And on that topic, so progressive overload, they both hit, Casey and Henrietta both hit on that. We repeat workouts for about 6 weeks at a time. Oftentimes we'll repeat movements for longer. And so gradually increasing your weights or reps over time to keep making progress. So I want to talk a little bit about progressive overload, because it's not just that. So let's say we have a squat and we're doing 3 sets of 10, right? Maybe you're lifting 50 pounds for your 3 sets of 10 in week 1. And then week 2, maybe you're lifting 3 sets of 10, but you're recovering more quickly between your sets. You're still lifting the same amount of weight, but you're noticing that you're able to move with more control in that squat. You're noticing on that, 90-second rest, you're feeling pretty good at like 30 seconds, where last week it took the full 90 to get back to the bar and like feel like you could even stand the bar up. So remembering too, and then that's a good indication probably that next week you can increase. Maybe it's not going up to 55 pounds for all 3 sets. Maybe it's going up to 55 pounds on the first set and then going down to 50 on the second and third set. Or maybe it's holding for like an extra second at the bottom of that squat and then driving out and feeling really strong. So especially if you're new, like don't feel like you have to throw more weight on the bar every single week. Really, really slow down the movement. Think about this. Can I slow down the movement and lift with more control? Because if you can, then that should be the priority when you're starting out. Because more control means more tension throughout that lift, and more tension equates to better hypertrophy. So making sure we're not just like falling in and out of a squat, or we're not doing, usually 9 times out of 10 when I see women work out, they're doing the movement too fast. they would benefit by just slowing it down, paying attention to their muscle, which I know is hard to do, especially with like a little bit of an overactive brain. It's hard to just like focus on the muscle you're working, but even looking in the mirror, slowing it down, doing a lateral raise and going slow and controlled and not going outside of that range of motion. That's going to be where you're maintaining that tension. That's what you want to pay attention to, is in a squat. Where am I able to maintain tension? Which means where in that squat are my muscles active? Where are my like glutes, hamstrings, quads actively engaged? If you're going all the way down to the bottom where your butt's hitting your calves, probably you're losing that tension in the bottom of the squat. It's not necessarily a bad thing from like a performance standpoint, but from a hypertrophy standpoint, if you can stay in that active range of motion, you're going to benefit more. With that being said, if you can just continue to get a little bit lower and lower in your squat and try to maintain control all the way through, that's going to benefit you too. In one of the podcasts I listened to recently, they were talking about kind of tests to do to see like how your longevity is and how you're doing in regards to like muscle mass per your frame. And they were talking about if you're in your 60s, a good test would be to lay flat on your back and get up to standing and then back down on your back and then up to standing. And for one, to be able to do that, to have enough muscle tissue and not too much adipose fat, that you're able to complete that. And then in addition to that, like being able to do that 10 times without being gassed. And I think like there's people that are younger than that in their 30s and 40s that wouldn't be able to do that. So that's a good kind of like test. Maybe try it out this week and see, can you do 10 of those very easily? Can you not? That's something that you should do, because lifting weights is going to translate to, have you fallen down? Can you get back up? Can you go from a kneeling position to standing really easily? Can you go from a bottom of a squat to standing without weight? So just what functional movements do you want to be able to do for the rest of your life? Doing those with weight now are going to help you with that. A good example of that was a Turkish get up, right? I think those of us in the CrossFit space have done Turkish get-ups, but you pull the weight and essentially you go from lying to standing with a dumbbell, and it's very challenging. So if you can do all 10, then Google a Turkish get-up and start with a light dumbbell and do that and progress through that. That's the challenge this month. Okay, so focusing on compound movements. If you can do compound movements, then you can go to machines and do isolated movements really well. But it is harder to start with machines doing isolated movements. That's not going to guarantee that you can do compound movements. So compound movements are fantastic when you want to build strength, and also hypertrophy, because they're going to challenge more than just one muscle group at a time. They're going to help with balance. They're going to help with coordination. And so if you're a beginner, starting with exercises that are compound movements are going to help a lot with your overall fitness, and then also how that will translate to functional strength for you. So exercises like squats, deadlifts, rows, are going to work multiple muscle groups, leading to greater strength overall. So I would recommend just starting with compound movements, keeping it simple, focusing on form, maybe starting with body weight, and then as you get more advanced, adding in machines. If you want to isolate certain muscle groups, I think that's fantastic. But be competent with compound movements first. Rest and recover. Muscles grow when you rest. So give yourself 48 hours between working the same muscle groups, ideally. So that's why we don't have, lower body programmed Monday, Tuesday with glutes on Wednesday. So we have, lower body, then upper body, then lower body, then upper body. That allows for your muscles to have enough time to recover so that you can come to that next training session. And like Casey said earlier, push intensity, because that's what is going to yield results. You're just doing the same lifts every day, doing, which I think happens a lot, like maybe going to like a group fitness class where you're doing a full body lift every day and you're wondering why you don't have results, then that is something to look at. Bring up your intensity and give yourself rest in between sessions, and that's going to likely yield better results for you. We talked about form already. And just a note on the form is if you guys have questions on your form, you can send us videos. You can post videos to the groups. You can DM myself or Hungry Fitness Coaching on the app, which is Sam, and we are happy to look at your video, review your form, and give you suggestions. Because that is going to be really important in preventing injury. And if you haven't lifted with a trainer at any point, then likely you could use some form feedback from one of us.
I think more than anything, like some eyes on you while you're moving, particularly if you're new to resistance training, but even not, even if you've been doing it for a long time, but you've never had eyes on you, like it's really hard to know what pushing to near failure or 1 to 2 or 3 reps shy. It's hard to know what that feels like without a little bit of help. So please, please, please use us. I love it when my one-on-one clients send me videos because like I can tell from, it's better in person, of course, but I can tell from video. I'm like, girlfriend, you can put 20 more pounds on the bar. Like, and like, of course I talk about form and like I send, longer than they want probably form messages back, but I would definitely encourage everybody to send videos. I think it's some eyes on you can be really, really, really helpful for that extra push that Casey was talking about.
Ooh, that makes me want to do like a lifting to near failure challenge, Griffin. Like I give like $100 away in the month of October for anyone that tags us on Instagram, showing us like a lift that's near failure. I don't necessarily want to see you like failing your back squats, but like I want to see you pushing that 9 RPE, that 1 to 2 reps in reserve on your lifts, which you guys hopefully know because we have that in the notes. What is 1 to 2 reps in reserve? That is you have 1 to 2 reps left until you hit failure. And how we as coaches know, like I think I might need to do that. If I might need to post about that because I think that'd be really fun to see everyone in the HF community pushing their lifts and pushing their intensity. Maybe I'll choose a lift that's going to be that's in the next couple of weeks, and we can do that because
that would be fun.
I think a lot of times we don't know. We think even myself, like I'm guilty of that sometimes. If I'm distracted, when I'm lifting, I was lifting with Craig last Saturday, and we were doing back, and he was telling me the reps. I was just kind of doing his workout with him, and it was lat pull downs, and he was telling me that it was 16 reps or to failure, and I was just doing the 16 reps, and he's like, that was not to failure. I was distracted. It was a Saturday. I was like, we had sports, and I was just kind of like getting it in, and that's fine sometimes, but just him mentioning it, I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm definitely not. I probably have 5 reps in reserve easily. So pushing myself on that next set, which was a few more reps, and noticing like, okay, now I'm slowing down, the movements are getting slower, and now I'm like grinding it to get those last couple of reps. And something like a lat pull down, you can do to failure because you're not going to injure yourself, right? That's not dangerous. But something like a back squat or a bench press, I would rather you stuck more to that 1 to 2 reps in reserve because that does allow for hypertrophy without risking injury. And then also I think allowing for kind of more optimal recovery too. So that's why we usually suggest that instead of 0 reps in reserve. But something like a lat pull down or like a pull up, it's just not happening. You can't do the next rep, and that's okay. You're not going to like struggle to recover from that. So staying consistent. I have strength train 3 to 4 times a week. Consistently showing up is where the magic happens. But just know something over nothing. Like if you aren't strength training consistently at all right now, getting in 1 day a week is fantastic. Let's take a win there. If you want to do more than that, then do 2 days a week. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend doing more than that for probably a month. Like get 2 days a week in, be consistent with that habit. Work out for 30 minutes, 2 days a week, do that for a month, maybe do it for 2 months before you add a 3rd day, because the goal is to be consistent. So to do 4 strength training sessions week 1 and then none weeks 2 through 4 is not going to help you build muscle. I would much rather you did 1 session every week or 2 sessions every week, and we're able to repeat that month over month. That's going to yield way more results than going to the gym 5 times this week and then none the rest of the month. So what can you do right now and put it on your calendar and make it happen consistently every single week, like rain or shine? That's what I want you to start with. And then fueling with carbs and fats. Don't skimp on food. They're essential for your workouts and muscle recovery. I think I've seen a lot of times women will just eat protein and nothing else. Like, I'm just gonna not eat any fat, not eat any carbs. I don't want to get fat. And you can eat carbohydrates and fats. You should enjoy your food throughout the day. You should also prioritize vegetables and fruit. But if you feel good and you want to have a piece of bread, or you want to have some cereal or whatever it is, just know, I mean, pay attention to how you feel on the foods that you're eating, but also know that you can have freedom with food choices and still build the body that you want to build. And likely that's going to be more sustainable for you than eliminating things. So, know that you need carbohydrates and fats to function and thrive. And then tracking your progress, log your workout weights. If you are an HF Physique subscriber or a one-on-one client, you can log your progress and then look at that and see, like, okay, what did I lift last week? Do I remember how that felt? I'm going to push a little bit heavier this week, or I'm going to go the same weight, but really slow down and control the movement. And then just kind of back to that, building muscle is so much more than aesthetics. It's so much more than just how we look. It's really is an investment in our future health and longevity, and just the quality of our life as we age. So I know right now that seems maybe far away for some of us, but it's likely you're noticing your parents and like how well they move and how functional they are, and wanting more. I know that that's, the case for me with like seeing my parents or my friends' parents or other people that are just 30 years older. Like, that is noticing the difference between those that prioritize resistance training and those that have not. I think the difference is really big in your 60s, maybe not as noticeable in your 30s, but as with each decade, it just becomes more apparent. And so setting yourself up for success now, starting with what feels possible, 30 minutes with our Fit Foundations or our home or gym workouts. And then if this is something you really want to invest time and receive more education and coaching on, we will be doing our muscle building cohort. And signups for that will launch on the 17th in about 10 days. So stay tuned for that. And I hope everyone has a fantastic week. Thank you so much for joining. It's so fun to see that there are women that want to learn more and are excited about building muscle. So I love this community. And as always, ask questions on the app if you have them. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for joining.